New vid. What do you think? From the towering skyscrapers of Wall Street to the desolate orange wastes of the Mojave, Patrick Bateman has axed it all. But one challenge lies dormant, mocking us like an unpaid tab at Dorsia. Today we're asking the only question that matters. Can you beat Fallout 4 as Patrick Bateman? So grab your skincare products, secure a res at Dorsia, and prepare yourself. This is gonna get messy. Let's lay down the rules. Our weapon choices are going to be axes, switchblades, and pistols that look like they belong in the hands of a Wall Street sociopath. Chainsaws, courtesy of Trickvane's murdering chainsaw mod, are a yes because Patrick deserves the finest in overkill. As for armor, suits. Patrick doesn't do power up. He'd rather die in style than live in a tin can. And finally, the golden rule. I must do whatever Patrick Bateman would do. Before we dive into the chaos, we need to make sure Patrick looks the part. Appearance is everything to someone like Bateman, and thankfully, Fallout 4 offers a respectable amount of customization. We're not talking Cyberpunk's foreskin levels of customization or a slider for how many business cards you can carry, but still, for 2015, Todd's 16 times the detail is serviceable. I, however, lack the artistic talent to sculpt a perfect digital Christian Bale. Thankfully, modder Vergesena saved me from my own mediocrity with a one-to-one recreation of Patrick Bateman.
Wow. Wow!
After some tweaking, adding the perfect jawline and serial killer eyes,
What the fuck?
our American Psycho was ready for the Commonwealth. But let me stop you there. Looks, as we all know, aren't exactly enough. Bateman is more than just a pretty face. He's a psychotic, mass-murdering, narcissistic, cannibalistic necrophile, and we're here to embody that energy. So, to enhance the immersion, I've added the bloodlust mechanic. Every 30 minutes, I'll have to slaughter the nearest NPC. No exceptions, no excuses. Even if it's Preston Garvey. Especially if it's Preston Garvey. It's been about 300 years since Fallout 4 released, so I'm going to assume you've already seen the intro. If you haven't, here's the SparkNotes version. Now, stats are crucial to the Bateman lifestyle, so this is what we're working with. Strength, basically maxed. His physique speaks for itself. 1,000 crunches daily, it's basically non-negotiable. Deception 3 for lockpicking. This is obviously very vital, but I'll explain why that is later. Endurance 6, because Patrick runs 5 miles a day. Charisma 7, because let's be real here, you're not getting into Dorsia without it. The rest of them, I don't need them. Patrick isn't here to be smart or agile. He's here to look good while killing. One intro later, we emerge from Vault 111, freshly uniced and ready to slaughter our way to the top. And I must say, mutually assured destruction was clearly not mutual at all, because goddamn, we are looking fantastic. However, I can't say the same for our beloved Boston. What awaited us was a city of chaos, but chaos means money, and Patrick loves money. For our first stop, Sanctuary Hills to snag the special book and get a free stat point. On the way down, I ran into Codsworth, who greeted us with existential dread and some spiel about a kid Patrick apparently had. News to me, but whatever. I told Codsworth I had some videotapes to return, and left. Now, my first major objective for the run will be Grognak's axe, hiding away in Hubris Comics, an old pre-war comic book store in downtown Boston. Grognak's axe in Fallout 4 is its only axe. It's a unique weapon, something that isn't very common in Fallout 4. This would be quite the journey, especially as we were still only level 1. But I had a goal, to be the best Patrick Bateman possible, which I was off to a terrible start with. Quite the embarrassing mistake here. I was still wearing the Vault suit, which is obviously not Patrick Bateman attire. After a quick wardrobe adjustment, we were back in business. Heading down the hill, a swarm of mutant mosquitoes attacked. Apparently, even the perfect male body can't intimidate Boston's wildlife. Naturally, I did the most logical thing. Scrambled onto a rooftop where their flimsy little proboscises couldn't reach me. After a tense standoff, and by that I mean cowering in fear, I made a highly strategic tactical retreat. Once free, I continued on the road, stumbling upon an old diner, its inhabitants currently in the process of being robbed. Fortunately, I was there to save the day. Patrick's charisma scared the robbers away, but just as I was about to leave, the 30-minute bloodlust hit. Sorry, Trudy, it's not personal, it's just business. Thankfully, Trudy actually had a switchblade in her shop inventory, meaning I could just buy it right there on the spot and then shank her to death. Since we've just hit our first episode of Psychotic Rage, I thought I'd sprinkle a little extra spice onto the video to keep you entertained. By that, I mean a variety of facts to do with Patrick Bateman, or American Psycho, the text he originates from. Also, yes, shout out to Nerbert's fantastic Lincoln facts in his Fallout 4 video. That's basically where I got the idea from. It's a really good video, you should check it out. Patrick Bateman fact number 1. Did you know that 90s heartthrob Leonardo DiCaprio was almost cast as Patrick Bateman? Christian Bale, who later went on to play the character, almost lost the role to DiCaprio. Trying to capitalize on the post-Titanic hype, the studio craved Leo's star power to boost the film's profile. Thankfully, Aaron, the director, thought he was too boyish and didn't want to bring along his swarms of teen stans. Honestly, I'd say dodged a bullet. Anyhow, continuing south, I ran into a pack of feral ghouls. They tried to eat me alive, but a mixture of sheer determination and Grognak level strength kept me going. It was a bit dicey, but I managed to stall the group by sprinting away, devouring a boatload of food items, and then returning fire with the switchblade. I won't lie to you, I probably would have died here if it wasn't for the impeccable timing of me leveling up. Thankfully, we pulled through, and with the fight over, I spent my perk points, choosing big leads for extra melee damage, and locksmith for lockpicking, because Grognak's axe actually can't be obtained without the ability to open advanced locks or advanced terminals. Seeing as I was already near Cambridge, I figured I'd pop by Fallout 4's resident Boy Scouts and talk to Dan's for some easy XP. This proved to be a great idea, as within seconds of talking, I was bombarded with a fat load of experience and level 4. But we've got a problem. Patrick's cannibalistic tendencies require the cannibal perk, which needs 8 endurance. We, at the moment, only had 6. So I had to devise a plan, and here's what I came up with. 1 point into it now, and then in the not so distant future, I'll go and get the endurance bobblehead located at Poseidon Energy way down south. Should be fun. With all that nonsense out of the way, I headed for Arcjet with Dans. Truth be told, I didn't care about the mission or him at all. I was just here for the money. Moving as a team, we slowly fought our way to the building, fighting off both synth and raiders alike. Miraculously, on our way there, I found an old, dusty suit on a corpse. Not Dorsia material, but better than being naked. Unfortunately for Dans, the 30-minute bloodlust timer struck again. I tried to kill him, but Todd Howard had clearly blessed him with plot armor thicker than my patience. I tried melting him with literal jet fuel as displayed here in this lovely little compilation, but he quite literally wouldn't die. Talk about blue balls, man. Oh my god. A few stabs with the old knife didn't do the trick, so with great disappointment, I trudged myself back to the Brotherhood of Steel outpost, took my reward, and hit level 5. Since I had failed to find a suitable killable candidate, I swam across the river to my south, stumbling upon an old settlement, with, luckily, one settler inside. With our bloodthirst quenched, it was now time to head for Boston. The rest of the journey was luckily quite peaceful. I arrived at Hubrix Comics in dashing fashion. However, unfortunately, the building was definitely not dashing. Inside was a giant pack of feral ghouls, but Grognak's axe was calling my name. This should have been a quick in-and-out slaughter, loot, and leave kind of deal, but Hubris Comics had other plans. Somewhere near the top of the building, waiting for us like a middle manager eager to hand out overtime, was a glowing one. This would have been fine if I was higher level, but because I was so low, it could drop me in 2 hits. The only solution I could come up with was to avoid it, hiding in the bathroom stalls, on the roof. Bruh. And generally played the most embarrassing game of hide-and-seek imaginable. After countless deaths and what can only be described as a marathon of failure, I finally broke down and did what every great psycho does when their plans crumble. I googled it. Turns out, Grognak's axe wasn't hidden in some distant vault guarded by a glowing one. It was right by the entrance. The whole time. God, I hate myself. Armed with Grognak's axe and a tuxedo I found in the bin, the Patrick cosplay was finally coming together. I was missing something though. While I had a good weapon and somewhat good clothing, I lacked one of the most important Patrick Bateman ingredients, a secretary. Now, there are numerous companions in Fallout 4, with varying personalities and fighting styles. In American Psycho, Patrick's secretary, Jean, is loyal, efficient, and blonde. Naturally, I set my eyes on Strong, a grotesque green super mutant. Why? Because he's loyal, efficient, and will follow orders without question. The perfect secretary. Speaking of perfect, a perfect fact about a perfect man. Or in this case, a book. Patrick Bateman fact numero 2. Did you know that in some countries, the original American Psycho novel was so controversial it was sold shrink-wrapped behind the counter. This was apparently because parents freaked out about the content. And if this wasn't bad enough, I checked what country this was, and it was mine. You have got to be kidding me, man. Australia, get your shit together. Anyway, rescuing Strong was a completely different vibe. I had to climb Trinity Tower, once a classy Boston skyscraper, now a hideous mutant lab. The fight up was tough, even with the new axe. I managed to hit level 6 on the way up, and seeing how much damage the mutants were doing, I chose to grab Life Giver, upping our HP by 20. Through being cautious and biding my time in between swings, I eventually cleared enough to make it to the top. But then came Fist, the mutant mafia boss of the tower, sitting there with a minigun, over 200 HP, and a plethora of super mutant lackeys. He was less final boss and more walking HR department. My first plan, a reconnaissance mission, which is a fancy way of saying I tiptoed around like a lunatic looking for medical supplies. Second I stepped forward, however, they noticed me. And just like that, it was open season on Patrick Bateman. But in doing so, it gave me an idea. Seeing as I was fully protected from their fire on this staircase, I could lure them down to me, hopefully one by one. Turns out it works. I lured the mutants one by one. Eventually, Fist lumbered out, furious, and gunning me down faster than you can say reservation for one. So I did what any self-respecting psycho would, abused the staircase like it was a poorly written glitch. Vats, run, heal, repeat. Honestly, I felt like I was trapped in a game of mutant whack-a-mole, except this mole had a minigun. Finally, after enough back and forth swings to make a pendulum jealous, Fist fell. I celebrated the only way I knew how, an elegant teabagging session, tasteful, refined, and PB approved. Unlocking the cage to my secretary, I was ready to get the show on the road, or so I thought. All right, team, let's get the show on the road. Let me stop you there, buddy. Because instead we were going to get a random bloodthirst mid-descent that made me try and fail to kill Strong's pal, Rex Goodman. All right, Rex, come here, you little rat. Wait, what? Huh? Wait, what? 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 What the fuck? The man is unkillable. Todd's plot armor strikes again, blue-balling me in the most spectacular way. Thankfully, as the quest wrapped up, the game finally gave me permission to axe Rex in the back. A little delayed, but satisfying nonetheless. And then I was off. With Grognak's axe and our secretary secured, I'll now outline our next goals. First on the list is to acquire the endurance bobblehead for the cannibal perk, located right at the bottom of the map at Poseidon Energy. Number 2, find Pickman's blade. This is Fallout 4's most aesthetic and powerful knife, and will fit perfectly in our Patrick cosplay. And finally, number 3, acquire a gun. Now, I do have a specific one in mind, but I'll get to that later. Seeing as we were a bit low level for the bottom portion of the map, I decided I'd progress through the main story a bit, speedrunning through Nick Valentine's rescue at Vault 114. The vault proved dangerous, with armed gangsters roaming the halls at every turn. We, however, benched over 300 pounds and had a giant f***ing axe. By the time I made it to Valentine, 30 minutes had long passed, meaning I had to kill. Just like before, however, Todd swooped down from the heavens, looked me in the eyes, and whispered with a gentle touch, "No, BB, no." It was as if God himself had cast a spell on Valentine, for not one swing proved fruitful, but that did not stop me from beating the shit out of him for another 30 minutes. Approaching Skinny Malone and Darla, I saw an opportunity. If I convinced Darla to betray Skinny, she'd then turn friendly, and therefore I could kill her and get the 30-minute buffer. I call this efficiency and chaos, the Patrick Bateman way. After making it out of the vault, we hit level 8, but decided to hold off on using our perk point until after snagging the bobblehead. So I told Invincible Nick to piss off and headed south. The journey was a bloodbath, and not just because of the 30-minute timer. I axed pretty much anyone I came across. Travelers, traders, and ambitious entrepreneurs all fell victim to our psychotic whims. Nothing could stop the might of Patrick Bateman. I eventually reached the water water's edge and consulted the map to find Poseidon energy just a dozen or so minutes walk away. Unfortunately, this meant swimming suit first into irradiated water. Nothing says high-powered Wall Street executive quite like doing the backstroke in radioactive sludge. Halfway through, I encountered a deathclaw, which I immediately handed off to my loyal secretary to deal with, while I continued on my merry way. Multitasking at its finest. It had been a while since my last kill, and as fate would have it, the next NPC I stumbled upon was a fully power-armored Atom Cat. Definitely not the ideal fight. But apparently, a suit is the ultimate armor, because I disposed of them in mere seconds. This was such a power move that I decided to make a pit stop at their base and finish off the rest of them. I imagine they were quite confused as I suddenly burst in with a flurry of axe murders, followed by my detailed lecture on the importance of business cards. One celebration later, and after swallowing an ocean of irradiated swamp water, Poseidon energy came into view. A towering industrial relic. And oh look, Strong had just alerted the entire raider population. Thank you, Secretary. Running inside, I surveyed my surroundings. What stood before us was indeed a raider base, its inhabitants far outleveling myself and my companion. We were extremely outmatched. The bobblehead was located on the second floor, surrounded by raiders. I'd have to take things very, very slowly, which did not work out as I was instantly discovered by the turrets and blown to smithereens. On my return, I took a side path, which was much smoother in death, as I was once again absolutely destroyed. Yeah, I was really starting to feel the level disadvantage. Sneaking around the entire room took 5 painstaking minutes, and just when I thought I was in the clear to blow up the turrets, well, the clip speaks for itself. Spoiler, I died. A lot. It was like watching the murders and executions montage in reverse. But through sheer persistence and an impressive ability to eat bullets, I finally made it to the second floor. Here is where I reached the raiders, where surprisingly, things actually got easier. Without their turrets, I could axe them down with fantastic precision. Yes, their HP bars were beefy, but the old tactic of feign retreats, stimpaks, chems, and VATs worked wonders. Embodying my inner 14th century executioner, I axed my way through to the bobblehead. The XP haul from all those raiders got me to level 10, and with the extra endurance, I finally unlocked the cannibal perk. My first major goal was complete. Naturally, I celebrated by putting on Hip to be Square and doing an elaborate victory dance among the raider corpses. Of course, I can't use the real song because YouTube would smite me with a copyright strike, so you'll have to settle for some royalty-free garbage nonsense. It's not the same, but hey, just pretend it's playing in here. I waltzed out of there like I just scored a rare Zadorsia and embraced the cold sea breeze with all my loins. It was glorious. Feeling emboldened, I set my sights on the nearby Spectacle Island for the Luck bobblehead. Jumping down the building, I set forth to the island. Never mind. Jumping down a second time, I set forth, stumbling upon a lovely family known as the Warwicks. I abused their hospitality, sleeping in their beds to regen HP, and then axing them all to death. Honestly, the timer hadn't even ticked. I just wanted to kill them. From their beachside porch, I could see it, the wondrous island. Now, unfortunately, this is where things went a bit downhill. There would not be any wondrous island, for you see, something drastic happened instead, and I'll explain what. Originally, my plan for my weapon choices was to include a nail gun, since Patrick almost uses one in the film. I thought, perfect. Let's bring some cinematic flair to the Psycho run. Fallout 4's Creation Club actually offers a nail gun for free, so naturally, I downloaded it with the confidence of someone who's never read the words mod conflict in their life. Spoiler, it was not perfect. The mod didn't just crash my game, it obliterated it. My save, gone. Hours of progress, reduced to radioactive ash. It was like preparing for a night at Dorsia only to find your reservation was given to some loser wearing Oliver Peoples knockoffs. Unforgivable and absolutely devastating. So yeah, moral of the story, never trust a Creation Club pack if you're running mods, even basic ones. After blaming the modder, Todd Howard, and of course myself, I restarted the playthrough. I think the only difference this time was that I convinced the robbers to let me join them in taking over the diner whilst killing Trudy, as well as snagging a dirty black suit off one of the triggermen in Vault 114, which is perfect Bateman attire. Just like like Patrick's vengeance on Paul Allen, I axed my way through Boston again, back down to Poseidon Energy, and finally to the Warwick homestead. Approaching the water, I noticed a family of Mirelurks scurrying to my side. They're a bit like the annoying co-worker of Fallout. Always there, always loud, and oh my god, impossible to avoid. Naturally, I opted for stealth. No way Patrick would risk his fine black suit for a Mirelurk wrestling match. Diving in headfirst, I landed ashore and made my way to the old boat wreck. There it was, the Luck bobblehead. A little soaked, a little irradiated, but totally worth it. Things were finally starting to look up. Like any Wall Street executive, I'm a perfectionist. This extends to everything, even my secretary. Strong was functional, yes, but functional isn't fashionable. He deserved better than mutant grime and post-apocalyptic drapery. He needed something that screamed top-tier Wall Street secretary. A dress, skirt, high heels. So I hit the Nexus like a man on a mission, scouring for mods to bring my vision to life. And by Todd's beard, I found it. Super Mutant Clothes by M150. It was a godsend. Racing back to Sanctuary, I slapped together a crafting table, grabbed some needles and thread, and whipped up his new ensemble. It was transformative. Now that, my friends, is a secretary worthy of Friday Night Dossier. With that side quest checked off, it was time to rejoin the narrative. Heading back to Diamond City, I realized my bloodthirst timer had been ticking for over an hour. This meant one thing: I needed a victim, pronto. Luckily, just outside the city walls, I found my mark, a guard. Sneaking up, with my axe in hand, I turned the poor man into literal tomato soup. The nearby turret witnessed everything, but shockingly, no one else seemed to care at all. Diamond City, the hub of apathy. With my bloodthirst sated, I strolled into town like nothing had happened and headed for Valentine's Detective Agency. It was here that Todd Howard really decided to test my dedication to the Patrick Bateman roleplay. The game insisted I care about my dead wife and kidnapped son. Newsflash, I didn't. We're not playing the goddamn Lion King here, and I am not Mufasa mourning Simba. Every dialogue option was a painful reminder of how little I cared. Skip, skip, skip. Patrick would never. Reluctantly, I joined Mr. Nick here on a wild goose chase. Fine, I'll buy it, if there's money in it. The investigation led us to an old house in Diamond City. Apparently, some guy named after a cereal brand kidnapped our son. Spoiler, he was long gone. Nick suggested using dog meat to track him down. Dog meat, right. Except when I called for him, he wasn't exactly dog meat, he was thick meat. The dog had tripled in size. This wasn't a companion, this was a walking buffet. Considering Patrick's anti-animal stance, I gave thick meat a hard pass and set off for the location myself. Normally, this would have been daunting for a Fallout newbie, but I'd conquered worse. After all, I'd already done this in my vegan-only playthrough, a concept that would surely make Bateman gag. Heading west, I approached Fort Hagen, a former US Army base. I had very high hopes. The place practically oozed testosterone, hyper-masculine energy, strong characters, and most importantly, chiseled jawlines, or in this case, wall lines. Speaking of chiseled jawlines, Patrick Bateman fact number 3. Did you know that Christian Bale achieved his perfect Bateman physique through relentless gym sessions, 3 hours a day, 6 days a week? Honestly, respect. Patrick would approve. Anyway, back to our adventure. I slipped inside Fort Hagen, the 200-year-old walls cracking and creaking. I tiptoed up the stairs, ready to confront Kellogg, only to find myself staring down a small band of synths, guarded by a singular turret that clearly didn't get the memo about being intimidating. Taking the stealthy approach, I navigated through the old broken walls like a cat burglar in an antique store, and got the drop on them. One by one, the synths went down, and just as I was basking in my tactical genius, it hit me. My objective marker hadn't moved. When I reached what should have been the elevator down to Kellogg, I found a boarded up wall. Yes, that's right, I hadn't progressed the story enough for the elevator to actually exist. Turns out you have to speak to Dogmeat or the quest just throws a tantrum. So, filled with more rage than Patrick and an inferior business card reveal, I headed back to Diamond City, killing another guard for good measure, and chatted with Thickmeat for all of 5 seconds before waltzing back to Fort Hagen. If this wasn't frustrating enough, Todd Howard had the audacity to respawn every synth I'd killed, so I had to clear the entire building again. Thanks, Todd. With the synths dead, again, I finally took the elevator down and confronted Kellogg. He didn't stand a chance. I punched him so hard I ripped his arm clean off, and proceeded to beat him to death with it. Naturally, I capped things off by eating his corpse. A fitting farewell, don't you think? One awkward elevator ride later, strong small talk is not great, I was greeted by a giant Boy Scout ship appearing out of nowhere, but there was no time for that nonsense. I ran back to Diamond City, handed in the quest, and leveled up. I decided to put another point into bloody mess for that sweet extra damage. And in case you're wondering why I didn't mention grabbing it earlier, it's because after losing my save, my perk choices went through a slight revision. Now, axing things is fun and all, but I was starting to get bored with the one-trick murder routine. It was time to expand my arsenal and snag my second weapon of choice, Pickman's blade. This delightful little knife was located northeast of Diamond City in Pickman's gallery. The closest fast travel point was Swan's Pond, and since I was feeling stronger than last time, I thought, why not take him down? Bad idea. Swan still had a mean fastball and could easily one-shot me with a single rock. I employed my ingenious feigned retreat strategy, luring Swan into the nearby metro stop, where I could safely dodge his attacks. After some cat-and-mouse antics, Swan was down, and I officially declared myself king of the pond. A short walk later, I arrived at Pickman's gallery. Inside, I found a group of raiders, already looting the place. After turning them into fine red mist, I took a look around. The gallery was a masterpiece of horror. Heads on spikes, body bags, and blood everywhere. If this wasn't a Patrick Paradise, I don't know what is. Flipping through the old broken building, I made my way down to the basement. Somewhere along the way, I leveled up to 11 and grabbed adamantium skeleton, because so far, my limbs were made of spaghetti. At the bottom of the gallery, I found the remaining raiders holding up Pickman himself. Thinking I could negotiate, I tried to join forces, but in classic Bethesda fashion, they immediately turned hostile. So I slaughtered them all. Pickman, clearly impressed by my murderous efficiency, handed me a key and mentioned a reward. I thanked him, let him turn his back, then promptly axed him in the spine. With Pickman dead, I looted his safe and claimed my prize, Pickman's blade. With my second goal complete, I had a revelation. Patrick needed a home, a sanctuary that screamed Upper West Side chic with a splash of serial killer flair. Naturally, I turned my attention to Sanctuary itself. The place was a dump, but with some creative vision and a lot of questionable decor, I transformed it into the ultimate bachelor pad. I cleared out the clutter, old furniture, kitchen utensils, and a crib for a child I refuse to acknowledge exists, and started laying the foundations. Carpets, art, and of course, Nicolas Cage's face plastered everywhere. For the kitchen, I added some weights and state-of-the-art fridge. The bathroom featured a post-apocalyptic chic design with human flesh accents, while the bedroom boasted deathclaw sheets and a spinal cord centerpiece. Finally, I added mannequins for that extra touch of unsettling class, and slapped a big 11 on the door, Patrick's apartment number in the film. I dubbed it the Bateman residence. Please, step right in.
Now on the market for a mere 2 million caps, this quaint yet utterly unhinged pre-war house offers all the charm of a nuclear apocalypse, with the comforts of Commonwealth luxury. The centerpiece of the living room, a dashing pre-war mahogany bar, perfect for mixing drinks or cleaning bloodstains. Paired with a blue steel television and an art collection exclusively featuring Nicolas Cage's most unsettling expressions, this home promises to turn your nightmares into avant-garde dreams. The bathroom, a true marvel of modern post-nuclear annihilation design, showcases an eclectic mix of human flesh accents and charming blood-splattered tiles. It's a space that screams, live, laugh, eviscerate. Onto the master bedroom, where you'll find a gorgeous pre-war timber frame bed, adorned with death-clawed hide sheets and topped with a decorative spinal cord for the perfect mix of comfort and existential dread. In the corners, you'll notice a beautifully wrapped shopping basket and blood-stained walls, thoughtfully curated from past housewarming guests, to keep the ambiance both fragrant and fresh. Venturing into the kitchen, you'll find a post-apocalyptic gym setup, complete with strategically placed meat bags for punching or decor, depending on your taste. And let's not forget the piece de resistance, our state-of-the-art fridge, ideal for storing snacks, stim packs, or of course severed limbs. The Bateman residence, a true masterpiece of dark elegance and questionable ethics, is entering the market soon, guaranteed to bring your family memories to die for.
Well, that took a while. With my house complete, I leveled up just from crafting, proving once and for all that Patrick Bateman is the ultimate interior designer. It was time to refocus on the main story, starting with a trip to the memory den. There, I strapped into a pre-war sex chair and took an acid trip through Kellogg's memories. Honestly, I skipped most of the dialogue, but I got the gist. The Institute is bad, there's a rogue scientist, and, well, I couldn't couldn't really tell you the rest because I was too busy mashing the skip button like it owed me caps. Look, Patrick had bigger priorities, namely getting his hands on his first gun. That's right, it was time for goal number 3, acquiring the perfect firearm. 2 options stood out. The Deliverer, a sleek silenced pistol earned through the Railroad quest, Tradecraft, or the Silver Sidearm, a stylish reskin found in the $10 Shroud Manor DLC from the Creation Club. Naturally, I wanted the latter, so much so that I sold my cherished decade-old water elemental skin from Counter-Strike 2 to fund it. But here's the kicker. Steam, in all its ineffable wisdom, decided to withhold my money for a few days. Unfortunately, Patrick Bateman doesn't wait for processing times, so with no other choice, I donned my synth-loving disguise, swallowed my disdain for these underground weirdos, and headed straight for the railroad base, hidden inside the Old North Church. Entering the building, I shanked a few ghouls, solved a puzzle, and met the railroad gang. When asked why I wanted to join, I gave them a speech straight out of American Psycho about ending apartheid, nuclear disarmament, and promoting civil rights. They were sold. Patrick Bateman, humanitarian. After grabbing the quest from Deacon, I set off, running into a group of 3 people arguing. Being the problem solver I am, I killed all 3. Who needs diplomacy when you have an axe? Meeting up with Deacon, we RP walked our way to Ricky Dalton, a railroad informant who's eyeing an old coffee shop nearby in Lexington. This once bustling caffeine hub used to be the railroad's HQ, but now it's a synth playground crawling with Gen 1s. Our mission, get inside, grab Carrington's prototype, some ancient synth tech, and not die in the process. Naturally, as Patrick Bateman, I chose the axe first, think never approach, and charged the building like a chem-fueled gorilla. After pumping myself full of every chem in my inventory, including one I wasn't even sure was meant for humans, I hacked and sliced my way through every robotic limb that dared to exist in my presence. With each dismembered synth, I could feel the XP flowing, eventually leveling up and investing in agility because nothing says serial killer efficiency like faster reflexes. The ground floor was clear, so I headed into the basement where I stumbled upon a hidden elevator behind a bookshelf. But, plot twist, the game insisted I had failed to enter the building, so the elevator refused to work. Apparently, total annihilation of my enemies wasn't enough for Todd Howard. Fine, I guess. I ran back outside and headed for the backup entrance. Honestly, this quest was about as exciting as watching paint dry. I killed more synths, pulled off some absurd knife lunges straight out of Modern Warfare 2's Commando Pro playbook, and snagged the prototype. Edge of your seat excitement, I know. Deacon, being the absolute homie, handed me right now the Deliverer. And let me tell you, this thing was chef's kiss. Even with 0 perks boosting my pistol damage, this gun shredded. Naturally, being the emotionally stable individual I am, I unloaded an entire magazine into Deacon's face as a thank you. Unsurprisingly, he was unkillable. Todd Howard strikes again. With goal 3 complete, I returned to Sanctuary to pimp out my new toy. Once my masterpiece was ready, I headed back to the Old North Church to grab the quest XP I had forgotten to collect. Then, in true Patrick fashion, I wiped out the entire railroad. Well, that was refreshing. Next on the agenda, Virgil, the runaway Institute scientist hiding in the glowing sea. I fast traveled to the closest southeast point on the map, ready for a long and treacherous trek. Along the way, I heard a voice, young, whiny, and coming from a fridge. Turns out it was a child, but not just any child, a ghoul who'd been trapped in there for over 200 years. Talk about a sob story. Sadly, I couldn't kill it. Not even Patrick could justify turning a 200-year-old ghoul kid into mincemeat. So in a rare moment of kindness, I helped him find his parents. Because hey, deep down, I'm a giver. As they reunited in a tearful embrace, basking in the warmth of family joy, I did the only logical thing. Stabbed them all to death. Yeah, even I have to admit that one felt a bit much. The walk to the glowing sea was long and treacherous, or as Patrick might call it, cardio. For about 15 minutes of solid trekking, I reached the edge and naturally snapped a touristy photo with my ever-loyal and grotesquely photogenic secretary. But before heading to Virgil's cave, I made a pit stop at the Children of Adam base to squeeze in a quick kill and reset the bloodlust timer. Priorities, you know? Then, feeling refreshed and homicidally balanced, I strolled over to pay Virgil a visit. Also, shout out to one of the weirdest glitches I've ever seen. Upon entering Virgil's cave, I was instantly teleported directly to his feet. Is this some hidden fast travel feature or just another Todd Howard moment? After a chat, Virgil told me the only way into the Institute was by obtaining a Corsair chip. And so the next leg of my psychotic adventure began. Also, a quick PSA from future me. I've added a permanent bloodlust timer to the top right corner for a little more immersion. and transparency. Now you'll know exactly when the carnage is about to begin, rather than relying on my selective editing. Although if it disappears or shifts, it means I've offed someone off camera. Love it, hate it, let me know in the comments. Democracy is alive and well here. Now, back to Patrick's little murder tour. Before we could tackle the Corsa, we had one major problem: radiation. As aesthetically pleasing as being entirely glowing green might be, Patrick wasn't about to become the poster boy for rats. So after a quick detox session with Diamond City's resident doctor, yes, I paid for it, no, I'm not proud, tracking the Corsa signal led me to the old Green Tech Genetics building, which, as it turns out, was hosting an impromptu Gunner vs. Corsa battle royale. I let them duke it out for a bit, because why waste the effort, then swept in to clean up the mess. After hacking and stabbing my way to the top, I faced the Corsa directly. Naturally, diplomacy wasn't exactly an option.
I'm here to pick up an order. 2 large pepperoni and a calzone. Name is Fuck You.
So out came the knife, and several well-placed shanks later, the Corsa chip was mine. I even leveled up again, throwing another perk point into pistol damage to beef up the deliverer. With my bloodlust timer ticking ominously, I took the elevator to the roof for a much-needed breather. Standing there, looking out at the decaying ruins of Boston, I couldn't help but look inward. The cool breeze on my face, the city sprawled below, it was almost serene. Except, of course, for one glaring issue: invincible NPCs. I'm Patrick Bateman. I deserve to axe anyone I damn well please. The game's refusal to let me murder freely was a personal insult. My rage only grew when I returned to Virgil's cave. After handing over the Corsa chip, I attempted to stab him, because that's just how Patrick Bateman says thank you. But once again, Todd Howard's divine intervention spared his green hide. This was unacceptable. If the game wouldn't let me kill him, I'd make it let me. So I'd unloaded the killable NPCs mod faster than Patrick could call up Dorsia for a last-minute reservation. Armed with newfound freedom, I reloaded my save and gave Virgil a taste of justice, stabbing him not once, not twice, but 3 glorious times. His robot lackeys met a similar fate, and I left the cave victorious, loaded with loot, and finally at peace. Returning to Sanctuary, I was ready to unwind. But my homecoming was anything but peaceful. My bed had been replaced with a garbage tier mattress, a random 2-headed cow was lounging in my house, and some NPC was sleeping where I should be. The disrespect was off the charts. Clearly, Patrick needed a break, a vacation. So I decided it was time to visit Arcadia National Park. Of course, because this is Fallout 4, I couldn't just go on vacation. No, I had to agree to rescue a runaway girl to justify the trip. Fine, whatever. Now I was off to find a boat. I didn't have any nearby fast travel points, so I begrudgingly hoofed it from the edge of downtown Boston's northeast corner. Halfway through my trek to the Nakano residence, I stumbled upon the USS Constitution and its delightfully eccentric robot crew. They were on a mission to get their retro-futuristic ship airborne, and honestly, I couldn't resist joining in. After an absurd montage of errand running for the ship's head bot, Liberty Prime's chatty cousin, I watched the Constitution take off in all its rusty glory. My bloodlust timer hit 0 right as the robots soared away, so I sent them off with a heartfelt farewell by unloading my pistol at their ship. Unfortunately, they slipped away unscathed to a place where we all wished we could go, the Baxter Building, a skyscraper in the financial district. Yet not exactly the trip of a lifetime. Another level up, another point into pistol damage, and I was back on track, fueled by both vengeance and a newfound hatred for flying robots. Also, change of plans. I realized I wanted another agility point before heading on vacation. Why? Because I wanted the ninja perk in the future to upgrade my pistol damage. After all, Patrick Bateman doesn't settle for mediocrity, whether it's a skincare routine or his arsenal. So, like any sensible psycho, I made a quick detour to the wreck of the FMS Northern Star at the bottom of the map. Sneaking past the raiders like a stockbroker dodging the IRS, I snagged the agility bobblehead and then began the long, arduous trek back north. After what felt like an eternity of walking and muttering threats to raiders along the way, finally arrived at the Nakano residence. Stepping inside, I gathered the intel needed to secure my free boat ride. With that sorted, I set sail, ready to bring Patrick Bateman level chaos to new shores. As the boat glided toward the fog-drenched island, an ominous chill seeped into my bones. The air felt alive, thick with the kind of tension that whispered, someone's about to get axed. This was Patrick's natural habitat. Stepping onto the dock, I was greeted by the locals, but my mind was elsewhere. We had less than 4 minutes before the bloodlust demanded satisfaction. After our little chat, I was given with less than 2 minutes to make a move. Desperation struck, and I aimed for Avery. One shot later, she was flying into the stratosphere like a human rocket. Where did she... Huh? What?
No.
Predictably, this turned the whole town against me, so I reloaded my save and regrouped. As the clock ticked down, inspiration struck. The town was about to be attacked. Amidst the chaos of bullets flying and creatures swarming, I could take someone out without anyone noticing. When the fight broke out, I scanned for my target, locked onto them with VATS, and quietly took them out. Success. Patrick 1, consequences 0. With the immediate threat of the golfers handled, I leveled up and made my way back to chat with Avery. She started droning on about the situation in Bar Harbor, but I tuned out until she mentioned money. And if there's one thing Patrick Bateman loves more than an impeccable skincare routine, it's cold hard cash. After pretending to listen long enough to seem interested, I finally claimed my new perk point, putting it into stealth. I'd had my eye on this for a while, because let's be honest, being able to sneak up and axe someone without warning, that's the kind of efficiency Patrick can get behind. With all that nonsense squared away, it was time to help the townsfolk. Strictly for caps, of course. First up was the Mariner, a middle-aged woman who asked me to fetch her some power tools in exchange for caps. A straightforward yes from me. Next came Cassie, an old woman who claimed to be the last surviving member of her family. This fascinating tidbit inspired me to make her family officially extinct.
So long, Bowser!
Unfortunately, I had a full-on brain fart and completely forgot to reset the bloodlust timer. Oops. Then there was Longfellow, an old-timer who offered to guide me to Arcadia, the synth hideout and home of that runaway girl I was technically supposed to find. Obviously, I didn't really care about her, but the idea of taking a tour through a foggy national park with a crusty guide sounded oddly charming. So off we went, waltzing down the mist-covered streets. After a few close calls with the local wildlife and a satisfying bloodlust reset, courtesy of a Children of Atom scout, we finally made it to Arcadia. I waved off Longfellow, stepped inside, and was greeted by Dima, Nick Valentine's off-brand beta edition. I was appalled. Not only was he a prototype synth, but he also lacked the one thing that might have redeemed him, a stylish detective outfit. Disgraceful. It was immediately obvious that Dima needed to be eliminated, but even Patrick knows you can't chop where you haven't earned. Caps and XP came first. Priorities are everything. I found Kasumi Nakano hiding on the bottom floor of Arcadia, clearly neck deep in a quarter-life crisis. Naturally, being the absolute bastard I am, I convinced her to ditch her newfound family and join me in taking down Dima. Subtly, never heard of it. I stormed up to Dima and called him out on his crap directly. Shockingly, it worked. Too well, in fact, because the next thing I knew, I was agreeing to help him. Apparently, the island's resident radiation cult, the Children of Atom, was cooking up something big. What kind of big? No clue. Bloodshed though, which sounded promising, but they're kind of weird, so hard pass. Still, I agreed to help Dima retrieve his memories from the children's base. Not because I cared, but because it gave me the perfect excuse to get inside and then kill everyone. Before heading off, I swung by Kasumi to confirm the most important detail, my payment. Thankfully, she assured me I'd be compensated. With that, I set off. Oh, and would you look at that, another level up. 1 point into intelligence. Why? Because I wanted gun nuts so I could make our pistol even more of a killing machine. Stepping outside, I took in the crisp, irradiated air and the eerie silence of the island. It felt good to be on vacation, almost peaceful, if you ignored the bloodlust timer ticking down in the background. We had a long trek ahead to the nucleus, so I decided to make a detour to grab the power tools for the Mariner first. Sprinting down the hillside, I plunged headfirst into the eerie beauty of the foggy park. The trees eventually parted, revealing the wreckage of an old plane crash. Naturally, I ventured inside. Here I found a non-hostile super mutant, just vibing in his new metal home. Fantastic for him, but unfortunately for his life expectancy, the bloodlust timer had just hit 0, and we all know what that means. One quick shank of the knife later, Patrick was back on track. Pressing onward, I arrived at the old factory, a shadowy and ominous place. Flipping inside, I immediately spotted a few ghouls snoozing on the ground. I quietly dispatched them and then moved deeper into the building. More ghouls appeared, culminating in a familiar foe, my arch nemesis, the glowing one. But unlike last time, Patrick was prepared. Clearly, one of us had evolved since our last encounter. Spoiler, it wasn't the glowing one. Dispatching him with ease, I grabbed the tools and made my way out. Just as I was gearing up to leave, Machete Mike, yes, that's his actual name, swaggered onto the scene. Intrigued, I turned back to see what this guy wanted, and wouldn't you know it, he was after the tools too. Surprisingly, he'd offered a fat stack pack of 2,000 caps for them. My inner Wall Street broker, however, kicked in. I haggled it up to 2,750 caps, sealed the deal, and then immediately started scheming. Naturally, I figured I could double dip, take his caps, axe him, and deliver the tools to the mariner anyway. But alas, Todd Howard said no fun for you. As soon as the deal was done, the tools vanished into the digital ether. Devastating. On the upside though, killing Mike reset the bloodlust timer. So in a way, he still served a purpose. Thanks for your contribution, Mike. Short-lived as it was. Heading south toward the nucleus, I stumbled upon an outdoor cinema. A perfect vacation spot, or so I thought. About 3,000 ghouls seemed to have gotten the memo and were hogging all the seats. I systematically shot, shanked, and decimated them all. With the ghouls dealt with, me and my secretary finally got some alone time.
I need something to soothe this pain, to cool the lava you pump through my veins, 'cause I'm burning up for you.
Vacation vibes restored, I pressed onward and eventually arrived at the nucleus. Arriving at the gate, the guards informed me I'd need to undergo an initiation to gain entry. Patrick Bateman doing rituals for some radioactive cult? Hell no. So naturally, I emptied an entire pistol mag into the nearest guard's face, axed the rest of them like I was chopping firewood, and waltzed inside to finish off the rest of them. Initially, I tried to keep things stealthy, picking off any lingering cultists at the entrance. But my earlier massacre must have tipped them off, because the entire base soon knew I was there. With stealth out the window, it devoted into an all-out bloodbath. It was not easy. These guys had gamma guns that overloaded me with rads every time I got hit. To make matters worse, I only had 2 rataways left. My stress level was reaching Patrick at restaurant levels. Desperate, I used every trick in the book. VATS, cover, and of course using my secretary as a mutant meat shield. Finally, I reached Tectus, their leader, and promptly shanked him into next week. Not content with simply killing him, I ate his naked corpse, then plucked myself onto his throne like I owned the place. It was a moment of god-tier villainy. After basking in my victory, I remembered that I was actually here for something. Dima's memories. Oops. Sneaking through the nucleus's futuristic security and one terrifying encounter with a legendary Soltron, I somehow made it to the terminal and started hacking. Then came the infamous quest. 2 hours of Fallout 4's worst puzzle. Spare you the misery, we're just going to skip to the part where I left the nucleus with Dima's memories in hand. Turns out, those memories revealed the existence of a nuke inside the nucleus. A literal nuke. A chance to blow these lunatics off the map? I was salivating. First though, I needed the launch codes. Before heading off, I stopped by Arcadia to sell my recently acquired Children of Adam loot and restocked on Radaway. Because seriously, what was this place doing to my skin? After cleaning out the shop supply and killing some poor synth refugee for good measure, I set off to hunt down those glorious nuke codes. Scaling down the mountain, I stumbled across some wolves. Dispatching them with ease, I hit enough XP for another leveler. Another point into intelligence, because Patrick knows brains equal brawn when it comes to mods, and I was back on the hunt for those nuke codes. They were supposed to be in an old hotel, crawling with super mutants. Stealth? Not today. I charged in there like the Sigma male I am, axe first, clearing a path straight to the front door. Inside, after some looting and axe swinging, I discovered a hidden door behind a bookcase. Jackpot, right? Wrong, because in true Todd Howard fashion, the codes weren't there. No, they were on a crashed boat on the opposite side of the island. Determined, I sprinted like my psychotic life depended on it. Definitely faster than Patrick's morning routine run. Upon reaching the crash site, I butchered the Milo guards, dove headfirst into the radioactive water, and grabbed the codes. Holding that launch key in my blood-soaked hands, I could feel the chaos brewing. It was nuke time, baby. Back at the nucleus, I gleefully unleashed hell. The nuke sadly wasn't big enough to wipe out the whole island, but hey, you take what you can get. With the Children of Adam vaporized, I returned to Arcadia to bask in the aftermath. Dima, predictably, was pissed. His little speech was cut short when I calmly selected VATS, targeted his head, and reduced it to mush. As his lifeless body crumbled to the floor, I thought, justice. Of course, I didn't stop there. I worked my way through the entire synth population. Oddly enough, nobody seemed to notice their leaders were missing until after I started axing my way through the main floor. It was a bloody grind, but with my stash of chems and stimpaks, I carved through them all. And yes, naturally, I made sure to kill Kasumi. Patrick does not do loose ends. Hopefully her death wouldn't screw me out of any XP when I got back home. But let's be real, at this point, you know I don't care about consequences. With all that stabbing behind me, I racked up a fat load of XP and finally hit level 21. gun, unlocking my first point in the gun nut perk. With Bar Harbor sufficiently blood-soaked, I decided it was time to leave. Heading back to Bar Harbor to catch the boat home, I was greeted by a sight that boiled my psychotic blood. Avery, the one person I assumed would appreciate my total annihilation of the children of Atom, was mad about it. He rambled on about devastation or something. Meanwhile, Alan, a guy I hadn't even spoken to, was fully on my side. This betrayal from Avery could not go unpunished. In a fit of rage, I whipped out the deliverer and delivered a clean shot straight to her cerebellum. Instant chaos. Everyone in town turned on me. With no time to explain my creative differences, I ditched Strong and dove straight into the boat, sailing out of there as quickly as I could. As far as I was concerned, Patrick Bateman had officially conquered Far Harbor. Turns out Strong survived. Good for him, I guess. Now came the awkward part, breaking the news about Kasumi. To my surprise, it wasn't awkward at all. I told Kenji his daughter was dead, watched him collapse into a puddle of tears, then promptly shot his wife, and put 3 rounds into his own head. At this point, I was starting to wonder if I'd crossed some invisible line of moral decency. I mean, what even is this challenge anymore? Who have I become? A monster? A god? I can't tell. Before leaving the Nakano residence, I decided to ransack their belongings for good measure. And what did I find? None other than Agent 47 suit from the Hitman franchise, just chilling in their washing machine. Was it fate? Perhaps. I slapped that bad boy on, trotted outside, and basked in the glow of my unhinged success. Patrick was back, baby, and he was looking sharp. Things were definitely going well. With vacation over, it was time to refocus on the main story. I needed an ally to break into the Institute, and with the Railroad 6 feet under and the Brotherhood of Steel being far too plebeian for Patrick's taste, the choice was clear: the Minutemen. Sure, they're a ragtag group of wannabe revolutionaries, but the best part, they'd worship me like a god, rather than treating me like some expendable grunt. Bateman doesn't take orders, he gives them. After making it to Concord, I slipped into the decrepit Museum of Freedom. Climbing through the crumbling wooden death trap, I eventually found Preston and his merry band of tagalongs. Sturgis mentioned a minigun and a suit of power armor tucked away in a vertibird on the roof to handle the raiders. Helpful, right? Except Sturgis didn't realize I'd use the minigun to handle them instead. The brilliance? Preston wasn't inside. He was out on the balcony fighting the raiders. So, technically, I thought I could still complete the quest. Emphasis on thought. After obliterating the Deathclaw, I went back to Preston. Problem: Preston, while physically present, was mentally elsewhere. Mama Murphy, despite being a fine mist of minigun residue, was apparently still part of his imaginary tea party. I tried to talk to him about the Institute schematics, but Preston just ended the conversation mid-sentence. When I tried again, he told me to meet him in Sanctuary, except he didn't move. So I fast-traveled there, slept for a bit, and hoped for the best. He finally showed up, but wouldn't help me until I did the usual Minutemen errands. Fine, okay, easy. I quickly handled some settlements, even snagging a level up in the process. Then Preston hit me with a curveball. Only Sturgis could help me with the schematics. Sturgis, who was currently one with the Concord floorboards thanks to my earlier minigun spree. Brilliant.
Why isn't it possible?
It's just not.
Why not, you stupid bastard?
In a fit of rage, I turned my frustrations on Preston the Settlers. Surely my kill everyone mod would handle this. Wrong. Preston refused to die. No explanation. He was simply invincible. Furious and bewildered, I fled Sanctuary, tears of anger streaming down my face. Left with no choice, I decided to try the Brotherhood of Steel. Heading over to Dan's, who I'd ghosted since losing my save, I breezed through ArcJet for the second time to join the Brotherhood. During my initiation, I realized my bloodlust timer was ticking down, so naturally, I shot a poor Brotherhood soldier right in front of everyone. Weirdly, no one cared. After meeting Maxon aboard the Prydwen, I made it through the Brotherhood quests. But let's be honest, this relationship, never a match. They're all about discipline and hating anything abnormal. Patrick, a chem-riddled, self-obsessed liability. Yet let's be honest, I would have been airlocked on site if Maxon weren't blind to red flags. Still, I played along, completing Maxon's quests and returning to him for help with building the teleporter. But instead of helping, Maxon refused outright. I don't know if this was just a bug or Maxon being Maxon. I was pissed. So let's recap. Railroad, dead. Minutemen, screwed because Sturgis was a bullet sponge. Brotherhood, Maxon's a stubborn bitch in a leather trench coat. I had 0 options. Faced with this existential crisis, I did the only thing that made sense. Whipped out a chainsaw and carved into their leader. Unfortunately, the second the blade touched him, the game crashed. And that, my friends, is why you haven't seen chainsaws at all this run. My save is haunted, man. What is this? Alright, so chainsaws were off the table, but that didn't mean the Brotherhood was safe. If they weren't going to let me in, I'd just make sure no one else got to join either. Fueled by a melody of chems and rage, I shanked Maxon faster than you can say leather daddy, then got to work dismantling his entire faction. It wasn't easy, but holding the line at the back of the ship turned the tides in my favor. Tight spaces meant fewer enemies at once, and I was already way too overpowered for this point in the game. After carving my way through the Prydwen's corridors, I pulled off the ultimate Bond move, diving off the ship into the water below and swimming away like the drama king I am. Back at Sanctuary, I decided to stop playing nice with Fate and resurrected Sturgis using console commands. Surprisingly, the game didn't immediately implode, and after a quick teleporter building montage, I was in. The Institute, clean, futuristic, and an absolute glow-up compared to the wasteland dumps I've been frequenting. Patrick Bateman would thrive here. I finally reached the room where the game tried to gaslight me into believing I'd found my long-lost son. Joke's on them, I was way more interested in the pristine design of the elevator buttons. That is really nice. Eventually I gave in and talked to the kid.
Sean, open the door.
Turns out my son was actually a 70-year-old man, and not the dweeb in the glass box next door. Classic bait and switch. After the revelation, I agreed to help the Institute, but not before taking care of the real priorities, dropping a 200-year-old nuclear juice, enjoying a long overdue shower, and indulging in my much-neglected skincare routine. Speaking of skincare routines, Patrick Bateman fact number 4. Did you know that Patrick Bateman's skincare routine is a simple 10-step process? In the morning, if his face is a little puffy, he puts on an ice pack while doing stomach crunches. After removing the ice pack, he uses a deep pore cleanser lotion. Jumping in the shower, he uses a water-activated gel cleanser, followed by a honey almond body scrub and an exfoliating gel scrub specifically for his face. Next, he applies a herb mint facial mask, leaving it on for 10 minutes while preparing the rest of his routine. After removing the mask, he uses an aftershave lotion with little or no alcohol to avoid drying out the skin and looking older. He follows that with a moisturizer, an anti-aging eye balm, and finishes with a final layer of moisturizing protective lotion. Absolute psycho-level precision. After a quick tour of the Institute's inner workings and exchanging pleasantries with its head nerds, including Madison Lee, the treacherous rat from Fallout 3, Sean handed me a mission: eliminate a rogue synth running a Raidergan. Perfect. After teaming up with X6, a courser who insisted on being helpful despite my obvious disdain, we stormed their hideout. The initial plan was sniper fire from a distance, but one accidental mini-nuke to the face later, I decided stealth was overrated. I charged in towards the main ship, shanking my way through the raiders. Eventually, I bagged the synth leader, cleaned out the raiders' loot, and got back to Sean with my prize. Next up, Bunker Hill. Honestly, it was just a chaotic free-for-all between the Institute, the Brotherhood, and somehow the Railroad, despite their recent extermination. Patrick, being the apex predator of the Commonwealth, shredded through everyone. Descending into the bunker beneath, I encountered some synth refugees who begged for mercy. Naturally, I took their caps, demanded more, and then stabbed them in the face. The courser accompanying me was less than thrilled, so I taught him a lesson too. Returning to Sean, we had a touching father-son moment on a rooftop. Finally recognized my brilliance, offering me a seat among the Institute's elite. Finally, some goddamn respect. Armed with a new perk, rank 4 big leagues, I strutted into the boardroom, ready to flex my metaphorical business card. Sean, however, had to ruin the vibe by announcing his imminent death. Unlucky for him, but great for me. His demise meant more power for yours truly. The Institute's busy work began with a trip to the mass fusion building, securing a nuclear reactor to power their operations. Not too challenging, since the Brotherhood was now just a shadow of its former self. Then came convincing an awkward scientist to rejoin the Institute and delivering a speech to the Commonwealth, a perfect opportunity for Patrick to air his psychotic grievances and blame everyone else for ruining his Christmas parties. Things were looking good. As the Institute's new God King, I was living my best life, but Patrick doesn't leave loose ends. First up, replacing my game-breaking chainsaw. The answer? Harvester, a Ripper variant tucked away in Far Harbor. Back on the boat I went, ready for round 2 with Bar Harbor. Yet upon my arrival, no one seemed to care about my previous reign of terror. I even dragged Avery's corpse through the town, not even a side-eye. This is why I love this place. After a casual stroll through the fog, I snagged the Harvester. But word of an eternal life serum reached my ears. Patrick had to have it. I followed this trail, and it led me to the Cabot House, home to a 200-year-old Jack Cabot. Tasked with retrieving a stolen serum, I found myself face to face with raiders and an alpha deathclaw, which I bravely outsmarted by abusing staircase physics. Dispatching the raiders, I claimed the serum, but obviously lied to Jack about its fate, pocketing it for myself. Patrick deserves only the best. So after wrapping up the quest, Jack sends me on a wild goose chase to track down his sister, Imogene, who's apparently gone missing. He suggested I start asking around Good Neighbor, specifically at the Third Rail Bar, her old stomping ground. So off I go, heading into the bar, ready to shake down some patrons for info. But then something unexpected catches my attention.
Took a walk out in the fence. Had to talk with a man about some cans. He asked me what's your flavor. I said I need a favor.
Patrick, ever the opportunist, swoops in the moment she steps off stage. In a blink, I've charmed her into coming home with me. Fast forward to waking up in a dingy apartment, she tells me her one true love is the stage. Tough luck, Magnolia. My first love's a Grognak sax and this shiny new ripper. It was only fair. Naturally, my actions escalate into a full-scale massacre of everyone in the bar. Stabbing, slicing, ripping. It's a symphony of chaos. Okay, maybe I overdid it. Anyway, back to Imogene. After helping her out of whatever mess she's gotten herself into, I return to the Cabot house and get hit with a lore dump that's so wild it makes Patrick's life look tame. Turns out their immortality isn't from green juice and kale. Nope, it's all thanks to an ancient alien artifact Jack's dad, Lorenzo, unearthed during an archaeological dig centuries ago. Plot twist, the artifact didn't just make Lorenzo immortal, it also made him batshit crazy. So the Cabots locked him up in Parsons State Insane Asylum. Not exactly father-son bonding material. Jack's been keeping him contained with some high-tech mumbo-jumbo, but now, raiders are trying to bust him out. So we rush to Parsons, and it's absolute mayhem. Raiders are everywhere, and the whole place looks like a frat party that spiraled way out of control. After hacking, slashing, and ripping my way through the chaos, I make it to Lorenzo's containment chamber. He starts sweet-talking me, claiming the Cabots locked him up out of greed, not necessity. Honestly, I don't care. I just want his powers. So, naturally, I let him go free. Returning to the Cabot house with Lorenzo, he betrays me, and forced to defend myself, I ripper him into oblivion. To add insult to injury, I still managed to guilt-trip Jack into paying me for the job, despite the minor inconvenience of me having indirectly killed his entire family. Nice guy. And yeah, I killed Jack too. You know we can't have loose ends. Since Far Harbor was already under my belt, I decided it was time to tackle Nucleus and spread the gospel of Patrick Bateman across other lands than just the Commonwealth. After a quick jog to the transit center, I found some wounded guy sobbing about his kidnapped wife and kid. I hand him a stimpak to gain his trust, then axed him in the back because Patrick does not do charity. Nucleus's gauntlet is pretty straightforward. After breezing through the traps, I kill Coulter thanks to some insider info from his lackey Gage and become the new overboss. The rest of the DLC is a blur of claiming territories, battling a Mirelurk queen with 0 bullets and broken limbs, and wiping out hordes of enemies. So Nucleus, I'd say conquered. Now for the grand finale, finishing off the Brotherhood. Somehow, despite me having already wiped them out once, they're back for more, which is fine by me, because Patrick is always up for round 2. After another orgy of stabbing, slicing, and blowing stuff up, I finally obliterate them for good. It feels glorious. And there you have it. Can you beat Fallout 4 as Patrick Bateman? The answer is obviously yes. Just as long as you're okay with throwing all your morals out the window. But nonetheless, a great time. If you stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching. As a reward, here's a photo of my dog. This video was by far the most time-consuming one I've ever worked on, so if you could leave a like if you liked it, a comment, or even subscribing, I would really appreciate it. I've also been streaming lately on my Twitch channel, playing a bit of hardcore classic WoW, so if that's your cup of tea, or you just want to drop by and have a chat, do come check it out. The link will be in the description. Until the next video, guys, farewell.